Hey, it's Roxanne, EARTH1111. Today we're going to dive deep and understand what is evil and what makes a person do the unthinkable. So we're going to get rid of all the fear. So don't worry, this video is not going to create any fear inside you. It's instead going to empower you when we understand at the core level what darkness is really about. What is the shadow that has taken over a lot of people in the world, and really just it is everywhere. When we understand what it really means, we can close the door on evil in our own lives and out there in the world. Very important video today on EARTH1111. Hey, it's Roxanne. This is EARTH1111. If you're interested in understanding the absolute chaos going on in the world out there and how we are going to transition into a brand new paradigm of new earth, make sure you guys subscribe and hit that bell. Don't forget to share, comment, and like. Now, to understand the origin of evil, we have to go back hundreds of millions of years, if not billions of years, to when consciousness was first seeded into our universal time spiral. This is a 15-dimensional time matrix. Now, there are infinite other multiverses out there, but ours is based on free will. So when we were first seeded, we were seeded through the Cradle of Lyra. So a lot of you might actually resonate with being a Lyran or a Lyran starseed. Now again, if you want a video on that, I can do a video on that some other time. But when we were first seeded, when consciousness was first seeded into this free will time spiral, we were plasma liquid light avatars. So we were 12th dimensional beings. Now, because it's based on free will, there's always going to be a few beings or a few of the pack, right, that decide to kind of start degrading from natural order. So we were created to always live in alignment with natural order, with balance, with harmony with the universe and each other. We weren't created to have this predator mind, these lower urges, right, to act against the whole. So consciousness was seeded and created to be these perfect avatar liquid light beings in alignment with natural order, with balance, with harmony, right? Harmony with one and the universe and the environment around us. Now, what happened is, of course, a few beings decided that they didn't want to act with those, right, with that natural order, that natural urge within themselves to maintain that balance. Now, when a being moves away from its connection to source, it starts to degrade. It gets further from its life force, right? This is when you live in alignment to that pillar, to that vertical pillar, you are in full connection with source, right? That source field. This is that infinite amount of energy that flows constantly between you and the infinite oneness. Now, when you remove yourself from that, you start degrading because you lose life force. Your DNA, who you are, starts moving away from that perfection. Now, when something moves away from really the original intent of why that consciousness was created in the first place, it starts to take on a false identity or false personas. So any being, right? So this isn't just on the 12th dimensional avatar level. This could be on the oversoul level. This could be on the soul level, on the ego level where the 3D human exists. At every level, anywhere where you have a distortion, this aspect starts acting out of that natural order. It starts acting in a more lower consciousness. So it becomes a lot more predator-like, or it wants power because it actually is losing power. So it has to seek outside of itself for more power. So it becomes a finite consciousness that needs to feed off of other energy systems in order to, right, stay sustained. So these avatars moving away from their life force start degrading in consciousness and start moving into this false identity of being separate from other, separate from God, separate from the universe. So when, like I said, I'm a human, or at any level, when a being moves away and starts identifying with this false belief patterns, with this false identity, it further degrades because it believes it's separate. It acts like it is separate. It will act like it is a parasite to the whole system. And it acts, right, for itself because it believes that all it is, right, that it's separate from everything and it has to survive. So understanding that evil was created because of consciousness moving out of alignment with its original intent. Your vertical pillar, which aligns you into your true authentic self. The further from that you go, the more that you act with these lower urges. We are either moving more in alignment or we're moving out of alignment. So in every single moment you are choosing, are you aligning to your highest timeline, or are you degrading from that and moving away from your highest timeline? So again, this happens moment to moment. It's never that we're locked in any shape or form. Now, when a consciousness moves away from that alignment, it will act out of natural order. It will act in reverse, in anti-life type scenarios. It will hold negative thoughts. It will hold negative emotions. It will believe it's separate. It will take action with that belief that it's separate. So it really moves itself further and further from its alignment with your highest timeline. So again, this goes for every single level of consciousness. Right? Those first beings were created with that perfection. They were created, so again, by them, I mean you. We were created as that living library. So we had the DNA of infinite galactic beings, of infinite, right? We had the DNA of all different types of beings from all over the multiverse. And we were meant to be the microcosmic stargates for the entire universal time spiral Stargate network. So we were essentially the controllers. We held in our template, our DNA, the full blueprint for the entire universal time spiral. We were able to become 15-dimensional, perfected master beings. Now, these beings that, right, those few that had their free will, and they decided that they didn't want to live in alignment with that divine will, let's say, with that divine perfection, well, they moved away from that. Now, all of a sudden, they're not happy that other aspects or other beings still have that connection to source. So when they moved away, they became a parasitic energy because they became a finite energy system, a closed loop system. So they essentially realized that they could harness energy from other systems in order to become, let's say, immortal. When in fact, if they would actually have done their own inner healing to get back into alignment with their perfection, with that natural order, they would naturally be eternal. So this happens on every level, right? These beings decided over many, 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 years, they decided they wanted more control. They wanted more power. They wanted, right? So they started dominating against the other, let's say, cosmic perfected beings that were still in alignment with Source. So this really became that polarity drama, right? Because, so understanding that in order for, so again, maybe this is just in our universal time spiral, but in order for us to become physicalized, for Source to, right, seed itself into different dimensional beings, that polarity, that duality of positive, negative, good versus bad, day versus night, that becomes a natural order in how we manifest, let's say, or materialize into a more physicalized state. So even though that is a natural thing, that polarity became out of balance, right? We were no longer in balance between two sides. That darkness ended up really festering and overtaking anything that was of the light. So again, this has been going on millions of years. And again, more and more things happen. Essentially, the negative type beings that were essentially degrading from that perfected template of their DNA, they ended up essentially blowing up the blueprint, and we fell into lower and lower states of consciousness. So we were never meant to become this physicalized, this low, right? We became a fallen galaxy, and then a fallen solar system, and a fallen planet, because of past choices of our consciousness that decided to, right, start degrading itself. And so again, this has been going on, again, not just the past 2 years, with a bunch of crazy billionaires that just want to take all the resources, right? Why do people get like that? Well, understanding, so again, this happens on every level. So when a being starts accepting or identifying with this false identity, that it is better than others, or it is a royal, or right, it's constant thought form and energy, and just its life revolves around just trying to survive, or it's in constant fear. It's all of these lower type emotions or lower urges. Maybe it is allowing itself to be controlled by unconscious behaviors, unconscious energies, maybe by sexual type urges, right? So it's all about understanding that natural order is really just living in alignment with the way that we were created to be. The problem is we live in such an artificial world that, again, was created by these beings, right? So understand that this isn't just something that happened millions of years ago. That consciousness decided to create, right, its own levels of consciousness. So now we have a lot of beings out there, right? The elites, the so-called elites, or certain people that just seem to be really easily controlled by these lower urges, by these lower ego or lower negative ego aspects of themselves, right? They identify a lot with the mind, for example, but there's not a lot going on in the heart. So the heart is closed. So again, that happens when you move out of alignment with Source. Okay? When a being moves out of its alignment, the heart shuts down, because the heart is really that center point. When you move out of center, you're now going to be acting in either programming, right, those lower urges, or you're stuck in the mind. And it's the logical, analyzing mind that it was really a false construct, because it only knows what it knows from the past based on things that happened, right? Whereas the heart has that connection infinitely to all levels. It's able to know truth. The mind actually knows a very limited truth. So a lot of these beings, right, or people out there, experts, right, politicians, certain authority figures out there in the world, they are so stuck either in, right, that complete just following their urges, right, from one thing to the next, just trying to, right, satisfy that void within themselves. So they're searching outside themselves, right, for power, for more money, for, right, pleasure, for things like that. So those are lower type urges that bring you out of alignment of natural order. Now, of course, you know, it's natural for us to have, right, these urges of being, right, for things like pleasure, or for things, you know, like feeling secure. Those are normal. But the perversion starts when, right, when people live their entire life obsessing about these things, right? So they no longer come into balance and can see things from a higher perspective. They're constantly seeking out the next high or the next thing, right? So no amount of money will ever be enough for these people, or no amount of power will ever be enough, because they literally, their own soul is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, because they are controlled by all of these lower urges that are really also lower energies, lower entities, lower consciousness. So again, you are made up of infinite soul parts. So a lot of us have, right, all of us have, until we heal them, we have traumas or our shadow side. So again, the shadow is what gives you those urges, those lower emotions. The whole point is to heal and recognize the shadow, heal it so you can come back into alignment. And then you're no longer pulled and pushed and controlled by those darker aspects of yourself. So again, we never have to judge or blame or criticize, right, the shadow aspects of ourselves. It's more about recognizing that if you have a trauma, that if you have a toxin, that if you have more of a negative ego aspect of yourself, that's a blind spot for you. So that is the exact energy that will be, let's say, targeted by more evil type people in the world. So we are co-creators of the universe. We are the co-creator. So are you co-creating negativity, fear, anger, worrying, right? Lack. So what happens every time you have those negative thoughts, those negative energies, you are creating with your own mind, consciousness. You create these morphogenetic fields. Think of these as like reality bubbles. So thoughts literally create reality. Now, when we have, right, millions of people out there creating negative things because they're constantly in a cycle of fear or negativity, or they have a lot of trauma, so they're replaying violent scenes in their mind, or, right, so again, this goes on every single level of all these things we need to be healing. But where are these thoughts going? Well, consciousness vibrates in different dimensional bandwidths depending on the frequency. So lower frequency thoughts, energies, right? Fear, guilt, shame, jealousy, all these different things, they're going to create lower scattered, let's say, ugly type fields that are not in harmonic, or right, that are not harmonic, that are not connected to source, or that don't have this perfected state. So these thoughts will create and fill up a lower a dimensional space called the lower astral realm. So the lower astral realm is the fourth dimensional level, full of everyone's trauma, of everyone's negative thought forms, right? So recognize that reality is created by a thought. Literally, thoughts create these fields that attract to it more energy, right? This feedback loop, and start creating more and more physicalized reality that we experience, right? Reality around us is a hologram. Nothing is physical. I'm not here, and neither are you, right? Your senses, your five senses, plus your higher senses, your higher chakras, are taking in information and giving you a reality bubble. So when people exist in fear 24/7, right? When they exist in anger, all these types of things, you are literally attaching yourself. You are feeding yourself into a lower reality. So like I said, a lot of these, right, people out there are completely plugged right into the astral plane. The astral plane is a cesspool of everyone's toxicity, trauma, of the scariest monster creature, demonic type energies you could ever think of. And I know a lot about the astral plane because I deal with it a lot, right? A lot of this consciousness, right? We are transitioning and we are transmuting this shadow, the collective shadow of everyone's stuff. We are allowing these soul parts, these great parts of us that are just in this perpetual hell, replaying a horrible thing over and over again, right? So every time that you have a shock in your life or a trauma, right? Maybe you hear some bad news, or you have an accident. All of these create more and more stuff in the astral plane and these lower levels where consciousness is trapped. So a part of you, right, soul parts of you get trapped, replaying the same scenario over and over again because you have not processed that information during that moment. So that shock feeling literally puts a blockage in your system, and now you have a program. Now you have a trauma that is in your nervous system. So it traps part of your consciousness in this astral plane. So again, this astral plane is huge because it's full of everyone's stuff. Because, right, we live in a world that has been fallen for so many eons that the amount of trauma and tragedies and horrible and horrific things that have happened, not just, recently on the planet, or in your childhood, or in, right, to our ancestors, but over infinite lifetimes, past lives, right? They're all happening right now simultaneously. So you are literally experiencing that trauma, that horrible thing, from infinite other lifetimes that you're plugged into. They're all happening right now, all right now, and especially during Ascension, because we are actually moving all of these alternative timelines and healing them into us, the singularity. So they are literally, right, this lower astral plane is literally being merged into the physical reality right now, which is why we're seeing absolute craziness out there. That's because it's the lower astral plane stuff, consciousness, that is being physicalized, it's being healed. The evil out there in the world, right, these evil people, well, they have, right, they are bred for eons. A lot of these, these rich families or these controllers in the world were bred to believe the false identity, that they are separate, that they have power over others, that they deserve all the resources. So they have a lot more negative ego, so a lot more of these, right, these holes in their field. So if you are not, have not done your shadow work and merged back all of your soul parts, you know, removed them from the astral plane or wherever they are stuck in time and space, and healed that karma, healed those distortions, and allowed everything to come back into alignment with source, right? Your pillar, I always talk about. You have a lot of holes in your aura. This allows you, or this creates your field to be weak and creates vulnerabilities that other beings in the astral plane can also attach onto you, right? So again, no fear, because we can seal our field, heal aspects of us that are, right, lost, right? These wormholes I always talk about, right? These wormholes, so part of you is walled off and existing outside of you in separation. So that part of you can become evil, distorted, like a monster. Well, think about it. The astral plane is full of billions of peoples, right, over infinite lifetimes of all of the stuff that everyone's been through. That's what we're healing in this lifetime. That is why it is so freaking hard, right? And why a lot of you also, they're doing a lot of the collective shadow healing. It just seems like it's one thing after another, right? It feels like we're never going to end. But know that healing is a spiral, right? We have to heal infinite amount of things that have happened, right? That are trapped. The good thing is that these are able to transition to a higher level. The evil is literally being dissolved. But it's up to us to close the door on that evil. Every time that you allow yourself to, right, to be controlled by a lower urge, maybe by an addiction, right? You numb yourself out, don't want to look at something, you know, deflect, self-sabotage. Every time that you, right, go into fear, get triggered and blame someone else. All these lower states, all these lower urges, that is you coming from your shadow, coming from one of your lower aspects. Well, think about, right, a lot of these people that exist out there, right, the evil people. Well, they have infinite amounts of these shadow aspects that control every single thing, right, every thought they have. They're in a perpetual state of hell. And so their soul has no more free will, because they have allowed themselves over not just this lifetime, but infinite lifetimes. And they've been bred to have so many of these weaknesses in their field that they have a lot of these attachments that come in. So I call these black hole portal people. Do you ever wonder why certain people, right, just all of a sudden shoot up something, you know, shoot up a school or things like that? It's like, where did it come from? Well, when you don't deal with your shadow controls you. So again, we've all been there, right? We've all got, you know, I remember as a kid, you know, when I would be triggered by something, or I would be, you know, having a rage moment, I would be like myself back here, right? Kind of back here, observing myself over here, right? So I'd be kind of like my higher self, observing my Roxanne's ego self having a flip out, right? I couldn't really stop it in the moment because I was just, there's so much power moving through you. But it's interesting how knowing that, right, a lot of these people exist in that perpetual state all the time. They don't have the ability to even recognize their ego when they're in that moment. So for you at home, that's one thing as well, right? Closing the door on that evil is recognizing when you're coming from your own negative ego, right? Because the negative ego opens the door to evil in the world, in your life. Because it's us that, you know, don't really want to look at something, don't want to deal with it, right? We're too tired tonight, you know, too scared to make that change because, you know, all these excuses, all these reasons, right? Every time that we, like I said, we, you know, don't, you know, we lie, we cheat, we don't follow our ethics, right? All these different things add up to us allowing evil into our lives, right? Every time that we're the victim, right? So it's all these lower states. You're attaching yourself into a lower realm, a lower reality, and you're going to see more evil out there. You're going to see more injustices. You're going to see more things that make you feel smaller, like a victim, right? Because that's what the evil wants to do. It wants to suck you dry of any life force. It wants to disempower people, make people feel completely weak, right? Where they just run to the authority figures to be saved, right? That's part of the plan. So again, I will be doing a future video on all the different ways that these, you know, these evil people in the world have infiltrated humanity and the planet. Because it goes, right, it is so deep. We have to understand that they have been around for millions of years, and they knew this stellar activation was coming, this time of ascension was coming. This only happens, right, not just every 26,500 years, because we're actually in a bigger cycle than that. We're in a 16,000, so over 200,000 year cycle. All the gates are open, all the stargates. We're connecting. Source is being embodied fully into us, which is why there's no room for evil. There's no room to play small. There's no room to be, right, controlled by your lower selves, right? So evil out there won't exist if that shadow doesn't exist within us. Darkness can't exist out there if we heal that shadow within us, because we're not going to put up with the stuff that's going on out there, right? When you are so plugged in, because you heal all these holes within yourself, you become this huge unified field of infinite dimensionals, or really all the dimensions collapse into one unified field, right? You're able to source out and you can see every distortion. You can just tell when someone's lying to you. You can just see the BS. You can see it on every corner. And this is why people, right, when we ascend, when we embody, it's not about having some psychic abilities or, you know, being woke. It's about completely eradicating any of your own distortions and coming from that natural order yourself, where you get plugged in to higher and higher infinite energies of the multiverse, of organic creation, and you can source out anything that is artificial. So there's so many different things that are going on out there, ways, right, ways that they're trying to trap us or keep us suppressed or keep us in a loop. So again, you have to have that discernment. It's all about eradicating any of our own shadow aspects within ourselves, because that will dissolve anything out there, because we won't put up with it. It'll be like, nope, I'm not allowing that in my reality. Right? When we are not subjected by lower pushes and pulls in our life, we can stay firm within our true values and ethics and our alignment with natural, divine, organic creation, and not the entire artificial hellhole that they're trying to create out there for people to exist in, right? They want everyone believing that that's the only way there is. Another huge way that it is that it is projected is the AI agenda. So I'm not going to probably talk about that right now because I want to keep this video, it's already way too long. But I want to talk about that in a full another video. Because knowing that when you have, right, something that is out of alignment from its natural source, it has to, right, it is being degraded. It has to merge itself with artificial intelligence. It has to splice DNA. It has to try to keep itself sustained in many different ways. So that is also the huge push for the absolute artificial web out there on every single level. And the push to get everyone completely having their DNA changed from the inside out through, you know, right there, as well as GMOs in the food, right? Toxicity everywhere, chemicals everywhere, sprayed all over the place, all in the water, right? Having you attached to your phone 24/7, being fried by Wi-Fi signals and satellites, and the list goes on. But I will talk about it in a full video because really the infiltration is so deep. It has even been infiltrating the starseed and indigo and lightworker community, because knowing that evil has known about the ascension timeline for the last, right, hundreds of thousands of years, that it was coming at this now moment, means that a lot of the ascension has been hijacked. And that is for another full video as well, because that is so important right now. The false light is everywhere. And it is another mask of that false identity that leads to, right, consciousness that is in reverse, distorted, and evil, right? When something acts outside of natural order, it acts against life itself. So I have a huge announcement coming up on my next video. You guys are not going to want to miss this. It is so big. So much more coming up on EARTH1111. Make sure you guys subscribe. I hope I earned a thumbs up and share the video with everybody you know. It really helps people to really, right, remove that fear and know how to deal and handle the absolute ridiculous things that are going on out there in the world. Because everything out there is a mirror for you. It's all about doing the inner work, and the outside world automatically shapeshifts to match. I'm Roxanne. This has been EARTH1111.